Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses this morning. Admiral Davidson, on page 14 of your written testimony, again, you talked about, again, some of the challenges for increasing joint force lethality, the undersea warfare provision. Again, you, I think, very clearly stated sort of what's happening in that domain with, as you put it, 160 of the submarines in the Indo-Pacific region belong to China, Russia, and North Korea. And again, as you go on to describe, that's happening at the same time as our fleet size is shrinking. Again, just to finish that thought, Vice CNO Admiral Mers testified before Sea Power yesterday, again, who just sort of walked through our attack fleet size right now is 51, and with the retirements of the Los Angeles class, it will be at 42 by 2026. So given the fact that, again, you don't get all of those, that subforce, right? You get about 60% of it with the allocation to the Asia-Pacific or Indo-Pacific region versus other combatant command areas there. You know, that trajectory, which Admiral Harris, your predecessor, described repeatedly in his visits to our committee over the years, is a big concern. And obviously, it's not getting any better, I assume, based on your written testimony. Again, I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sir, the undersea domain, despite the capacity shortfalls, the number of submarines is an area in which we hold an asymmetric advantage over virtually, well, all our adversaries. It's a critical advantage that we need to extend. The capacity limitations as we go down over the course of the next several years is indeed a threat to the day-to-day operations that I think we need to have in the theater. For presence needs and risks RO plans to a certain extent as well. I'd be happy to talk about more details as we get to this later session.
Sure. So Admiral Harris in open session actually testified that only about 50% of the stated requirements for subs can be met, given, again, the fleet size today as opposed to where we're, I mean, again, that was open testimony. Is that still pretty much the state of play?
My day-to-day requirement is met by slightly over 50% of what I've asked for, yes.
Okay, so you know, this committee actually tried to change that last year in terms of at least getting some uptick in terms of the build rate, which again the administration opposed and was therefore blocked. The new budget embraces that belatedly, and again, just it would help, I guess, the cause in terms of your choices that you have to make out there if again, we move forward with a 3 sub build rate for this year's budget year, which actually will not be executed until 2023. And I just wonder if you could comment on that.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's doing our best to reverse the trend on the way to force structure of 42 in the 2026 timeframe is a critical need in the Indo-Pacific, yes.
Thank you. I'd like to just change the subject for a minute to talk about recently, the Coast Guard actually was part of a deployment in the Straits of Taiwan. The Coast Guard National Security Cutter Bertolf participated in that. And again, I just wonder if you could talk about that part of a sea service in terms of helping, again, U.S. presence in international waters.
Yes, sir. The Bertolf is on deployment in the Western Pacific. It has been for several weeks now and will be for a few months to come as well. They're a very important partner with the U.S. Navy on really all things in the region. In fact, the mission that they were doing not long before the Taiwan Strait Transit was helping us to enforce UN sanctions against North Korea and the illegal transfer of oils in ship-to-ship transfers there in the East China Sea. The Coast Guard has key relationships across the region, particularly for a lot of nations that don't have militaries, but they have perhaps defense forces and even less in some instances where there are just law enforcement forces. Because it really helps with key challenges that some of these nations have, whether it's illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, narcotics or human trafficking, maritime domain awareness. So they're an important contributor across the whole of the region. I've got a good relationship with Linda Fagan, the Coast Guard's Pacific Area Commander.
And again, real quick, we're about to, I just want to thank you for putting the spotlight on that. During the shutdown, there was this view that, you know, again, this was not part of the DOD fabric, and obviously what they're doing out there really rebuts that narrative.
Thank you very much. Gentleman's time is